structures are always this leap that Kierkegaard mentions. You know, you have to, it's a leap of faith. So for Kierkegaard, it's always within the not knowing, not being certain. This is why Kierkegaard, as I mentioned, uses the word leap. Using Heideggerian terms, we could perhaps say that it is the withdrawing of God, or for us to think today about the good, is we are drawn toward thinking about the good. And I would tend to think that we have to organize our thinking around the structure of faith more than we do, again, around the structure of knowledge. I'm not suggesting here that we should simply have faith in the good as it withdraws from us in our thinking. What I am pointing toward is that within this opening given to us by thinking itself, we begin to sense the good in terms of what it gives to us. So the good is giving us this time. I don't know who came up with the concept, who got the topic, but thank you. Because the good brought us here, thinking on the good. We could have thought on the bad, or we could have thought, yes?
Are you saying absolutely that, no, wait. Are you saying absolutely that thinking is good?
Yeah. I'll tell you, can I put a footnote under it? Because thinking is always open to transformation, I would say it is good.
So
that's a good question.
How do we account for our, pretty casual observation that there's so very little thinking going on? If we're propelled or compelled or drawn to thinking being good.
I think in a really fast way,
Yeah.
I think we can't tolerate the anxiety of thinking. That's why we don't think. And personally, I think that would be anything that I'm trying to work on in my life and in my philosophy, is to create a sensibility that is open to ambiguity. It's hard because knowledge is great. It gives us a sense of ourselves. It gives us a totalization of an identity. I'm going to talk about it, but I teach a class called Experience, Learning, and Identity, which is about the correlation between experience, learning, and identity. But I always show them that while they construct an identity, they're already deconstructing their identity. If you think about it, it actually happens, because once you start thinking about your identity, you start realizing that your sense of yourself is an attempt for you to organize yourself in such a way that you can be named, you can say who you are, but on the other hand, at the same time as you can call yourself who you are, you come to the realization that you are in the process of not becoming who you are, that you're already becoming, hopefully, someone other, because that's why you're in school. There's no point in learning if you're not willing to change. Yes?
You've emphasized the relationship aspect.
No, it's okay, there's two people.
I'm sorry. Maybe I...
Go ahead.
So we're in a relationship with others in society. And it would seem to me that any social context requires a certain regularity, organization, structure, if you will say absolutes. Now, obviously, humanity wants to test the limits because it has this counterpart of freedom.
Right.
But without accepting the fact that psychologically, We need regularity, we need structure, dependability as a part of our psyche.
I totally agree. And what I'm saying is that while we know that, we should know that we're knowing that. Just what you just said is exactly what I'm talking about. Meaning that while you construct that identity, you should know that that identity is not fixed. But we need it in order to function. I totally agree with you. And that's what we're talking about knowledge and thinking. We need knowledge to think. But we shouldn't rely only on the knowledge. Just like we shouldn't rely only on the identity. That's good. Yes?
I think that existence without thinking is intolerable. It's nihil. Or
Yeah.
how would you say nihilism?
Yeah.
It's nothing.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I know that as beings we're always thinking, but again, like Heidegger talked about, and I think psychology is extremely important in regard to everything that we're talking about. To be able to have the psychology, to allow yourself to be ambiguous and to be, is not an easy task. It's actually, I think sometimes Buddhism and, these types of things, which I don't aspire toward. I'm sorry if, I'm not saying that, but I do aspire toward a sense of allowing that lack to exist in your life. So I think that people are not thinking because they can't tolerate that space. To be uncertain means you're vulnerable in our society. The more you know, most people feel comfortable. That's what our whole society is structured about, gaining knowledge. Go get more knowledge and you can form your identity. And the more you know, the more secure you are in yourself. I think that's good, but if you're not questioning that, it becomes, you use the word intolerable, those people become intolerable. Yes. Oh, we have to pretty soon. Can we, yes. Can I go a little bit longer?
It seems to me that you're using the term thinking in 4 to 6 different ways.
Yeah.
And so, particularly when you talk about thinking calls us, what is that? What do you mean? Because you say, well, I think this. What you're saying is, I believe this. This is my sense of this particular term, right? And thinking, as we just heard back there, which goes on constantly in the sense of a neurological process, that's a different thing. And then this thinking that calls us, which supposedly must be outside of us in some way,
Right.
yet the only, if you follow even a philosopher like Searle, or if you follow what we know in neuroscience today, thinking isn't outside of us. Thinking
Right.
is definitely within us, and so I'm getting confused. So
Okay. I want to talk more, but I definitely, what I'm trying to say is it's not outside of us, but if, for example, let's just use what we're doing right now. If I were to approach your question with a determined idea of what I think I know, I wouldn't be answering your question. You asked me to think. You didn't ask me for an answer. Right? So you called me to thinking. We call each other to thinking. It's not outside of the world like a transcendental or metaphysical thing. It's that we are with the world. I'm not alone in the world. I never will be alone in the world. That's part of being in the world, is the togetherness of being. Is you cannot exist alone. And even if you can imagine it, when you're alone, you're with yourself. You're already with yourself. thinking always is more than one. It's always two. And Badiou talks about that in relation to love. Is you can't think within yourself. You can only think in relation to the self that is thinking. Okay, grand finale. I hope I have. Okay. There's a there. I got two. Okay.
There will be a panel.
Oh, good. Okay, so let me go right to the conclusion, right? 20 pages into this. See, you really inspired me to think. Okay, so all in all, let's in opening passage, this will be a good ending. The way that Badiou talks, Alain Badiou, I don't know if you've read him, but he's a very interesting philosopher who's in Switzerland with Nico and I. And this is his idea of philosophy, and that's what I hope we're doing, and this would be what I think philosophy should be. And he says the following: philosophy exists only insofar as there are paradoxical relations. Relations which fail to connect and should not connect. So if he's saying philosophy is happening because we cannot connect with the good. It is because we can't connect with the good that we are thinking, and that is philosophy. So let me just one really fast. Philosophy happens for Badiou when relations fail, or when relations lack the absolute connection. A paradox is nothing other for me than a relation which always cannot connect. It occurs in thinking when we cannot make absolute sense of meaning. A relation within thinking, language, and being, which, if I would have been able to go through it all, I tried to bring together. And we can talk about that. How poetic language for me brings us to the sensibility, thus the poetic becomings and the sensing of the good. And I think that if we follow this, we will have this discussion, and if done correctly, within discussion, it will give us the ebb and flow of discussion that is within the framework of a poetic sensibility. Through discussion, we can thus literally and figuratively change our mind. We can, believe it or not. We can change our mind. Literally, like it can change, like the neurons are changing. This opening, for me, is the opening for thinking and ethics. And ethics not of absolute truths, but of being open to this transformation itself. It is here in the space of thought that we can discuss the good and perhaps gain a sense of the good, and how we can bring that into our lives, and how we can bring it into the becoming of our being. What we do will be the good, not what we think. So thinking can become our becoming. And I will leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Amen.
Can I invite you to lunch and to try to grab Michael if you have questions?